the moment we are in medical college. But now, of course, things are. I mean, now this was the most.
I think it has to do with the socioeconomical context as well. You know,
Yes.
here everyone is still, you know, a lot of people are fighting for survival. But
Yeah, exactly.
people are trying to move up on the social ladder, social mobility, gain some access to more wealth, which keeps people alert, critical thinking. In the EU, it didn't exist anymore. People were completely, I don't know, it looked like I was living in between in a zombie land. Nobody was questioning anything. They just followed blindly whatever was proposed. So that's a huge difference between India, if I'm not mistaken, even when I first arrived here, November 21. And that suddenly pops up in my head. After 3 days, I bought myself the Times of India. And I opened the newspaper and I saw a split page. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the two persons mentioned there was you.
Oh.
Just remembered. On the left-hand side of the split page, there was an epidemiologist claiming that the measures were necessary to keep them in place, not to have a new surge of COVID. And on the other side of the split page, there was another epidemiologist, and if I'm not mistaken, it was you, that stated why it was unnecessary to maintain all these measures and that we should fall back on our natural immunity and that we have certain groups to protect, but we could not generalize it throughout the rest of the population. And I read that there was a first time in, I think, 15 years that I saw a debate in a newspaper, because in Europe it doesn't exist. Debate has been cancelled there for over a decade, before the COVID pandemic even. So we always hear a one-sided narrative. And coming into India, and the third day after my arrival here, and opening a newspaper and just seeing two different viewpoints, I was completely shocked. I was like, wow, in India there is a possibility to have a debate on this. And
yeah, that
opened up not only my mind, but also my heart. And up until today, you know, it's like you said, you never encountered any issue with your university or your colleagues, or in Europe, so many of my colleagues and myself in the meantime moved out of Europe, because up until today, this afternoon, I was blocked again on LinkedIn. My website was taken down. I was blocked on LinkedIn 3 times during the COVID pandemic. And a few days ago, I posted a small, not even politically inclined message on my LinkedIn, in which I stated, you know, Europe is no longer the continent of milk and honey. You know, you have so many taxation rates, high taxation rates, censorship, mis and disinformation are now put into a legislative framework in Europe, which is called the DSA, the Digital Services Act. So you're not allowed anymore to produce any dis or misinformation, or you get automatically cancelled. But nobody knows what the definition is of misinformation. Nobody states it anywhere. The same with misinformation. Nobody knows what it is. There is no definition. And who is going to decide what is this or misinformation? You know, nobody knows. But they have an open framework now to cancel anyone who doesn't, or at least dares to challenge the narrative. Yeah, that's how far we go in Europe now. So I'm so happy that you had the chance at least to be a counter voice here, and I think you must have been influential. That a lot of people I talk to today are now aware that they are not going to be fooled again with this kind of yes, with this kind of news. And so to conclude,
just one question, Sam. Can you understand Hindi?
A few words, but I don't think I'll
because
be able...
Hindi reaches a large number of people in India, more than English. As you said, what Indian middle class, as they are getting affluent, they are becoming more like European and American, with a less tolerance of any infection and all that. But the masses, they understand Hindi, and there's a journalist, Hindi journalist Asutosh Pathak, he has opened his own channel and he has given us dedicated space. So we do the Hindi broadcast now. Daily I am doing Hindi broadcast at 9 o'clock on these messages, on mask, on and we are going full spree that way. And one newspaper gave me a weekly column during the pandemic. That was National Herald. As I said, and all my opinions, counter views, they published it, my columns, and which I compiled it in the form of a book, COVID-19 Pandemic Third Eye. So there, as you rightly said, in India, we are not facing that much of authoritarianism, but there are people compromised because they are poor people, so for money, but they keep their thinking, I think, they are not like zombies, you said. We have people, because they have faced the hardship. They are in their lives, they are facing the hardship. They are, I mean, they are worldly wise. And the more you develop, the more you get fragile. I mean, or masses are anti-fragile, to borrow a term from this Taleb. And in fact, I was surprised that Taleb also, I was disappointed during the pandemic. He also fell in the narrative. Otherwise, I thought he was a brilliant author, Black Swan and all he has written, but he failed in the pandemic. And one thing I had a question. You said you were blocked on LinkedIn yesterday, but today I saw Mark Zuckerberg. He said they are not going to censor anymore Meta.
Yeah, that's also something we can talk about, but that's of course a different issue. It's not really health related, but I think it has to do with Trump. He fears Trump. He has to now. He's turning.
It is very much health related, Sam. I disagree, because all health messages do not go if there is censorship. So it is definitely.
Yeah, it's true. And I also blame Zuckerberg and Meta. And also LinkedIn, which is for Microsoft, and all the other social media, in the beginning even Twitter, that canceled a lot of dissenting voices, made it impossible to create a debate. And if you combine this with the fact that they were the proponents and the outlets as well to support all these lockdowns by just feeding one narrative, I think these social media companies and media in general have a huge responsibility in excess all-cause mortality that we still face today, because they created all this fuss why people got into anxiety, stress, psychological PTSD, and leading eventually to such an immune decline within the general population that a lot of people probably succumbed out of fear. And once they caught the virus, their immune system was so degraded, and also the fear they had that they were going to die led them to die eventually. So I think the media and social media have a huge responsibility, I think, in a lot of cases of all-cause excess mortality we saw during the pandemic and still today. And in that perspective, I find it very hypocritical from Mark Zuckerberg that he now suddenly states, yeah, but we're not going to censor anyone anymore.